The Montreal Canadiens are staring down a three-game set against the Calgary Flames beginning on Friday. Is that going to be the three-game set that decides their season? We'll discuss that and more on this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. Julian McKenzie back at it for another edition of Hockey Inside Out alongside the usual suspects. Stu Cowan from the Montreal Gazette, Jessica Rusnak from CBC Daybreak Montreal, Rick Green, former assistant coach and former Montreal Canadiens defenseman. Let's get right into it with these topics here. And I imagine if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan right now, maybe you're feeling a little bit nervous. You're seeing the Vancouver Canucks all of a sudden emerging from their layoff, winning games over the Toronto Maple Leafs. Calgary Flames are in the rearview mirror as well. The Montreal Canadiens, it just seems as if they've just lost all of the mojo they had from the first half of the season. Why do you think they're in the tank as they're in right now? And it's been such a struggle for them to score goals and all this other negativeness coming around this team. Why do you think it's gotten so bad?
I think that they haven't been doing enough to score goals, especially at this point of the season where the regular season is wrapping up. Games are going to be so tight because every point is so important. It could be the difference between making the playoffs and not. And the Canadiens aren't going to the net enough. They're not creating enough to in front of the goaltender to get those kind of goals that come off, a shin pad or something like that. And Jeff Petrie even mentioned it after the first game against the Edmonton Oilers, that those cute goals, those nice highlight reel goals are not the kind of goals that are going to be scored a lot at this point of the year. And the Canadiens aren't doing enough to make the opposition goaltender's life difficult. And that's something that they need to get back to if they want to start scoring more goals, because scoring one goal a game is not going to cut it, and it's not going to help them to win any games.
If you look at the shot leaders on the Canadiens after each game, it's normally the defenseman, which means all the shots are coming from the outside, from the blue line. Guys aren't willing to go to the dirty areas. And Ben Sherratt spoke about this after one of the recent games, saying, guys will go there once in a while, but they won't go there consistently like Brendan Gallagher does. And that's one of the reasons we're missing Brendan Gallagher so much. What I'm starting to wonder, though, 3 years ago, when this team was absolutely horrible, Marc Bergevin said attitude was the biggest problem. Team had a bad attitude. I think this team has a bad attitude. Carey Price lets in 3 goals on 14 shots, and he says he thinks he played well. Jonathan Drouin is asked about having only 2 goals all season, and he says looked at a column on the right, meaning his assists. And and Shea Weber doesn't want to analyze his own personal performance. I think there's an attitude problem on this team. Marc Bergevin has brought in new players, and this team looks exactly like the Canadiens did 3 years ago.
And, at this time of the year, it's all about desperation in your play. And if you look at their whole roster, we're not seeing enough of that. We're not seeing enough guys paying the price, getting involved physically, because obviously the opposition are going at their big key point getters and making life miserable for them. Canadians have to find a way to dig down and really get into some of the dirty areas. And let's face it, there's not many pretty tic-tac-toe type of goals being scored other than a guy like McDavid that can make things happen. But a lot of the goals are coming from the pucks getting to the net, crashing, rebounds, deflections, like they were doing before. But I don't see them, generating much of that. And the result is I don't think they're obviously are not scoring enough goals to allow them a chance to win.
As Michel Therrien used to say, you need 3 goals to win a game in the NHL, and the Canadiens don't score 3 goals very often.
No, it's just been really weird. This is a team that at one point was averaging a little over 4 goals in that first few games of the season. Jess, I keep thinking of your first point where you're saying that, around this time of year, you're not going to see a lot of those pretty highlight reel goals. Well, Connor McDavid would beg to differ on that. And let's be real here. The Montreal Canadiens do not have anyone as nearly as talented as a Connor McDavid. And the fact that they were able to hold him in check as long as they did was an amazing achievement in itself. But the fact that he was able to snap out of that in the way that he did was pretty much incredible. I want to just harp on the Brendan Gallagher thing for a second here. This is a guy who's still out of the lineup and will be for the foreseeable future. And I think of how this team was constructed. And it looked as if with all the depth they had accumulated at forward, it was supposed to be in place because of the fact that, they were reliant on guys like a Tatar and a Gallagher. And if those guys were to go out of the lineup, Josh Anderson would be able to pick up the slack. Tyler Toffoli would be able to pick up the slack. Some of the other guys on this team would be able to do that. Over the last few games, yes, Tyler Toffoli has gotten some goals in and Anderson as well, but it doesn't look as if everyone else has completely done that. What does it say about this team that this squad is very much still reliant on a Brendan Gallagher?
Well, if there was any doubt at all who the real leader of this hockey team is, I think we know now. It's Brendan Gallagher. He's the heart and soul of this team. He's the guy who pumps the Bleu Blanc Rouge blood through this team. Without him, they're just not the same team. I thought Brendan Gallagher should have been captain of this team. Shea Weber, part of being captain of the team is dealing with the media and speaking with the media. Shea Weber hates doing that. We saw examples of that again this week. I remember asking Brendan Gallagher a couple of seasons ago during a rough time about him always dealing with the media. He says, I realize when I speak to the media, I'm not really speaking to you. I'm speaking to the fans. And the fans care about this team, and the fans want to know that we care. And that's why I thought Brendan Gallagher would be a better captain. Let Shea Weber lead in the room if he wants. Let Brendan Gallagher just leads with the way he plays. If you look at him and the way he works and you're sitting on the bench and you're not working, you should feel guilty. If you don't, then there's something wrong with you, because Brendan Gallagher just brings it every single game, pays the price, goes to the dirty areas. He's one of the smallest guys on the team, and he plays bigger than the big guys. So Brendan Gallagher is the heart and soul of this Canadiens team, and without him in the lineup, they're not a very good team, and we're seeing that right now.
And he's a classic example of what and how you need to play to have success. I mean, you look at where he goes each and every game. He gets knocked down. He's in front of the net. He gets up. He's kicking. He's scratching. He's so determined to make the difference in each shift that he plays on. And I think as a group, they're missing that type of ingredient in their overall play. And that, to me, is a recipe for success. And I think that down the stretch here, you're going to have more guys playing like a Gallagher plays, if that's possible, and see that they got to get in those areas and stay in those areas. And if they get knocked down, they get back up and find a way to a second and third effort, because it's going to get really, really tough as we count down the last stretch of these hockey games.
And when Gallagher first got hurt and Carey Price is out with his lower body injury, everyone is saying, Jake Allen is up to the task to replacing Carey Price. You don't have to worry about your number one goaltender being out. But now it's an opportunity for someone to step up and fill in that role that's left behind with Brendan Gallagher being out. And so far, no one has stepped up their game. No one has taken that opportunity to be that spark plug that Brendan Gallagher is. And I think that's really concerning for this team, that one player's out and no one has been able to elevate their game. And it's not just what he's able to do on the ice. It's just, it's very contagious, the way that he plays, the way he's able to fire up his teammates and go out there and be able to change the game. A lot of times they talk about momentum changing because of a fight. Well, Brendan Gallagher can have one really great shift, and that could be the momentum changer with the Montreal Canadiens. And there's no one else who can do that right now on the Canadiens.
Yeah, when Claude Julien was coaching, Jesse, used to use Gallagher. Whatever line wasn't working, you'd put Gallagher on it, and that line would start working. He's the spark plug of this team, and he's going to be out until the end of the regular season, and that's not going to make the Canadiens. Some other guys need to start playing like Brendan Gallagher, or this team is going to be in a real fight to get into the playoffs.
And I think it's fair to say that you see where a lot of the goals are coming. They're coming from in tight, and you've got to get bodies in there and stay in there and find ways to get and win those one-on-one battles so that they can get opportunities to score and get a break. But if they're on the perimeter and they're not getting really involved, each and every guy on the offensive side, they're going to have a tough time finding ways to win.
Well, that
hold on. Just not to cut you guys off here. I'm listening to all of your points here, and you guys are making really great arguments for what Brendan Gallagher means to this team. Is this not flawed, though? Like, Brendan Gallagher is a heck of a hockey player, but on so many other teams in the National Hockey League, he would be a very good second-line player and a very good third-line player. Is it not concerning that a Montreal Canadiens team that invested as much as they did at forward still finds itself in a position where it's like, man, we really need guys to play like Brendan Gallagher? I understand he is elite at 5-on-5, but they went out and they got guys who were supposed to make them play beyond Brendan Gallagher if he were to go down. A team like a Winnipeg Jets has lost one of their leaders in Blake Wheeler for an indefinite period of time. Their top six is still good, that they're able to play withstanding that injury, for example. A team like if Brendan Gallagher was as talented as an Austin Matthews and a Connor McDavid, I get it. A top three player, you miss a guy like that, fine. But does no one realize that, like, losing a guy like a Brendan Gallagher and being so reliant on a guy like that, maybe I'm going to get crucified for this opinion here, it just speaks to how flawed truly the construction of this lineup really was. And it fooled a lot of us, including us media types who were really willing to prop this team up and say they were a true contending team at the beginning of the year. Brendan Gallagher, heck of a hockey player, heart and soul guy, absolute spark plug. But if your team finds itself in a position where they cannot play because they do not have that guy in the lineup, I'm sorry, your team is very much flawed. Tampa Bay doesn't have to worry about a guy like that going down, and they have to, and their whole team suffers. Colorado, same deal. Vegas, same deal. So many other teams you can look at in the National Hockey League who have solid top six forward cores, solid teams all around. And they might likely have a Brendan Gallagher type player. And if they go down, well, geez, it's another next man up. They have other guys who can fill those roles. I don't know how so many people don't realize that the fact that that this team is so reliant on Brendan Gallagher, that's a flaw in itself. Not to cut everyone off here, but it doesn't make sense.
The guys Mark Bergevin went out and got during the offseason have done their jobs. The guys who were already here haven't. You look at last season. Last season it was Drouin and Byron who got hurt, and this team went in the tank. This year, Gallagher gets hurt. They go in the tank. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. You wonder about the attitude of this team. I think this team has a bad attitude. It was easy. Pacioretty was the scapegoat. PK was the scapegoat. All these other guys were the scapegoats. They all got run out of town, and same issue, same problem in the room. And I think that comes down to the two main leaders on this team, Shea Weber and Carey Price. I think if there's a bad attitude in the locker room, that's on the leaders of this team. And the attitude's even worse when Brendan Gallagher's not there.
And if you go down the lineup, I mean, let's face it, Anderson brings it every night. I mean, you know what you're going to get from him. He's working, he's crashing, he's banging, he's trying to generate something. And the other guys, you need more from them. I mean, Armia, again, topic of conversation. He's a big guy. You need more from guys like that. Drouin, obviously, you got to have some guys that are going to have to pick it up and make something happen. And right now, they're not making it happen. Toffoli is a sniper. He's going to find a way to get in those soft areas, give him a chance to score. He's going to score. But the other guys, Byron also, Tatar, I mean, these guys got to get involved, and maybe they're not that big, but they're going to have to check their heart a little bit and find ways to elevate so that they can get involved and make the difference in the game. And if they don't, they got themselves in a big bind, because they just can't wait for Gallagher obviously to come back, and Anderson to kind of lead the way in how he plays each and every night. More guys needed to get dirty and grittier and get some of the ugly goals that are going to be a big part of winning hockey games.
I feel for Jake. Sorry, go ahead, Jess.
No, Julian, you're right that it's true that, Brendan Gallagher is not a superstar hockey player, but it's more the way he competes that makes him a good hockey player. And I think that's something that is lacking from some other people on this team, is they don't have the same urgency or that level of compete or the desire to win, the desire to score goals. Much when we were talking about them having difficulty scoring goals, it's those dirty areas you got to get to. And where is Brendan Gallagher's office? Right in front of the net, cross-checked in the face in order to get a goal. And not every hockey player is willing to do that.
I feel for Jake Allen too. Jake Allen to me is like Brendan Gallagher in goalie pads. This guy battles and battles and battles. He gets thrown in cold that first game at Edmonton in the second period and stands on his head and keeps the team in the game. But they never score any goals when he's in net. I mean, it's like they're averaging just over 2 goals a game when Jake Allen's in net. Don't look at Jake Allen's won-loss record. Look at his goals against average and save percentage. He's a battler out there in goalie pads. They need more battlers out there who aren't in goalie pads.
Not sure how much it's changed, but I think only about 4 other goaltenders have much worse run support in front of Jake Allen. I realize I got a little carried away there on that second question. Let's move on to point number 3, which I actually mentioned off top here. the Montreal Canadiens are going to be playing a 3-game series against the Calgary Flames, a team who we all thought was dead in the water. They were playing the boring Daryl Sutter hockey, but for whatever reason, it seems to work against the Montreal Canadiens. How important is it for the Montreal Canadiens to win out those games? I mean, I'll say this. The odds are still favorable for the Montreal Canadiens to make the playoffs, but the Calgary Flames obviously trailing behind them in the standings. And if they get some wins in that series, it looks pretty good for them. So I'll leave it to you, panelists. How important is it for the Montreal Canadiens to get some fair results and great results for this upcoming 3-game stand against the Calgary Flames?
Well, I think it's obvious with the point spread between the two teams that it's very critical that Montreal finds a way to give themselves a little bit of a cushion. But they're still, in the driver's seat. They still, I think, are going to find a way to win some hockey games and get into the playoffs. And unfortunately, the games of late has everybody concerned and talking about, oh boy, what can we expect? Are we going to have to wait till the last game of the season to see whether or not they're going to get in? But I think most importantly is how the team is playing as a group. I think this is a critical area on the success of the team, moving forward, to see who is playing up to their max each and every night and have a great team game moving forward so that they can, find ways to win, so that when they do get in the playoffs, they're confident knowing that their game is on track and they're playing the right way, and they're going to have some success if they believe that the type of team game that they're having is a good one and it's a recipe for success. So they have to get their act together, get their team game on, get their special teams on. All the details of the game have to be fine-tuned, and they still are in a good position to get into the playoffs.
Now, this could almost be like a mini playoff series in its own this week against the Calgary Flames. And I really hope it's competitive, fun hockey to watch, and the Montreal Canadiens show up for this and show some urgency. They did get lucky that Calgary also lost their Monday night game as well, and they weren't able to make that any ground on them. But they definitely have to use this to their advantage. They are in the driver's seat, but they very quickly could be in the passenger seat if they don't start finding ways to score goals. So this is going to be a huge week for the Montreal Canadiens, and definitely will be that week that I think you could point back to if they do miss the playoffs and say that was the make it or break it week.
Well, I don't think it'll be fun to watch because Daryl Sutter hockey is never fun to watch. But he plays that ground and pound style that led the Kings to the Stanley Cup. And when you're playing against Daryl Sutter, you have to be willing to pay the price. Like, it's not going to be easy getting to the net. It's going to be hard in the corners. And the Canadiens don't seem to want to pay the price. This series is 3-game series is a lot bigger for the Flames than it is for the Canadiens. I think the Flames need to win all 3 games if they want to have a chance to catch the Canadiens in the playoffs. But as I mentioned earlier, the Vancouver Canucks, after winning back-to-back games against the Leafs, are 8 points behind the Canadiens with 4 games in hand. And, that COVID situation the Canucks went through, you think that would be, okay, their season's over. There's no way these guys are going to battle back. But my God, the character that team has shown in their first 2 games against the Leafs is something that's sadly missing with the Canadiens. So I wouldn't put it beyond the Flames to win all 3 games against the Canadiens, because they're going to, they know that this is their season is on the line right here. And boy, Daryl Sutter is always hard on his players. He's going to be really hard on them in this series. And the Canadiens have shown since Brendan Gallagher went down, they just don't want to pay the price. And if they don't pay the price against the Flames could win all 3 of these games.
Stu, you're not surprised at the fact that the Canadiens could potentially lose all 3 of those games? Any predictions from you, Rick or Jess, on how this series might end up going?
I think the Canadiens will find a way to get 2 out of the 3. I think that they're obviously know that their backs are against the wall, but it's they're going to have to obviously get a lot more involved physically, because looking at the way the referees are allowing the games to be played right now, it's almost like playoff hockey. They're letting a lot of stuff go now that I don't think that they were letting go before. So there's a lot more physical and physical play in the overall game that they're allowing. And now it's time for the Canadiens to respond, and a real character test.
I think I agree with Rick. The Habs will win 2 of these 3 games. I'm interested to see what it's going to be like when Caden Primo does get a chance in goal, how the team will react to have the rookie goaltender. He's been playing great in the AHL. Of course, this is a different scenario, but I'm excited to see what that's going to be like having him in goal.
The first game of that series is going to be the key, because if the Canadiens win it, the Flames are going to be, as I said, I think the Flames need to win all 3 games to have a chance to catch the Canadiens. But if the Flames win the first game, look out, because momentum, as Rick would know from playing, is a huge thing, and the Flames will have a ton of momentum on their side if they can win that first game and get even closer to the Habs in those standings. So the first game is going to be huge, and I expect the Flames to come out in that first game just pounding the Canadiens, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Canadiens respond.
And you're right, Stu. The Canadiens are going to be challenged physically, and you're going to have to get some guys that maybe don't like that physical play, find ways to, well, you know what, I better get involved, because if I don't, I'm going to be on the losing side. And I mean, again, maybe I'm old school, but I'll tell you what, there should be a lot of pride in what is called the one-on-one battles. And when I had the opportunity to go up, I don't care who it was against, I wanted to win that battle one-on-one. I didn't want the opposition to take the puck from me, and that was a big part of my game. And I just hope that some of these guys realize that it comes down to these details of, you got to want it more than the guy you're playing against, and now it's time to show it.
And these are 2 teams who made coaching changes this year. One team brought in the old school Daryl Sutter. The other team brought in a guy with no NHL experience. And Daryl Sutter, if you don't play the way Daryl Sutter wants you to play, you won't play. He doesn't care who you are. He doesn't care if you're Johnny Gaudreau. He doesn't care. I don't think Dominic Ducharme has that same power in the Canadiens locker room as a rookie coach with an interim tag also. So that's the spark that I think that might come into play in this series also. Just which team is going to play for their coach more than the other one.
I will just end off and say that for my prediction, I'll say the Canadiens will go 1-1-1. They'll win a game, they'll lose a game in regulation, and I think they'll probably lose a game in overtime. Yeah,
Canadiens lose in overtime? Really, you think?
Oh, man, this Canadiens team. We'll have to wait and see how it goes for these next 3 games, all in Calgary, by the way. Do you guys remember when the Canadiens' power play looked okay? With Alex Burrows in charge, he got the guys going. Remember that like first practice with Ducharme and Burrows, where on their morning skate they had them running power play, and it looked as if things were going to be turning for the better. Well, not so much like everything else with this team as of late. How did the Canadiens power play get this bad again?
I don't know if it's COVID or the short season or the new division, that I find this year feels so long, even though it's a shortened season, because so much has happened. So it feels like a really long time ago that the power play was actually working. I think it's just the effect that they made a change. Alex Burrows came in, fresh face, fresh voice coming in with the power play. And I think they were buying into it. They were getting it. But then I think after a certain amount of time, that sort of adrenaline that can come in started to fade. I think other teams also can, see what Alex Burrows is bringing, study the Habs power play. But it's also the momentum that they're not able to create with it, that they kind of lost that energy to bring. And even after last game against the Edmonton Oilers, that they said, it's good to obviously score when you are on the power play. That's the goal of it, but you need to create momentum, and you can't have it hurt you. That when you go onto the power play, it is so horrible that the other team ends up getting the momentum from it. And that's been the issue with the Canadiens, that there's just been so many problems with them. And it seems like it's always the ongoing story year after year with the Canadiens, is they just can't figure out how to get the power play working consistently.
And the other teams know that they're struggling, so they're very, very aggressive on them, knowing very well that they don't have the confidence that they had before. So they're pressing them in all areas of the ice. But looking back at when they were clicking, look at Weber when he was getting pucks through to the net with the big shot. Look at Petrie. They were finding ways to time themselves and get in those lanes to allow them to unleash their great shots that they have. Now it's almost like a predictable thing, half-board plays, it's going, hoping Suzuki's going to get it on the half boards and he's going to score from there. Kotkaniemi, the same thing. So I think that they're doing more thinking than reacting, and more stagnant. They're not moving around and making it difficult for the opposition penalty killers. And this is going to be a huge part of their success story if they can figure out how to contribute on the power play. But right now, there's no threat. Oppositions know that, so they're taking liberties. Edmonton, with a 2-0, they're just making it really, really difficult for them. So, anyways, they gotta figure it out. They can get it turned around, but they better do it sooner than later.
Well, no, every time there's a coaching change, there's always a spark, right? That's for that first few games. You look at, when Ducharme came in, Jonathan Drouin was flying for the first 3 or 4 games. He has since played himself onto the fourth line. Same with the power play. When the Burrows came in and took over, they had that bump right away and everything looked great. But then they went back to being what they were before. They don't win enough puck battles on the power play. They're not willing to pay the price. They're not willing to go in front of the net. Man, they even have problems just getting into the zone with the puck. It's hard to understand how this power play just continues to be so bad, and it's a real problem. It's a real issue. Jeff Petrie said after the game the other night that they're losing momentum when they're on the power play. It's killing whatever momentum they might have. And I don't know, you fire another coach, you bring in another coach to try and get that bump. I mean, it's I wrote a column a little while ago after the trade deadline. Marc Bergevin did everything he could to try and make this a better team. It's all on the players now. This is like, if the power play is not working, that's on the players. Whatever's not working now, it's on the players. This team, as I mentioned before, they need to look in the mirror. This team needs an attitude check. And, that goes to the power play. That goes with their entire game. That goes all the way through. And the power play is just, it's hard to understand how it can continue to be so bad.
The problem with Marc Bergevin saying, well, it has to be all on the players is he got those players at the end of the day. And if this continues, this lack of success on the power play, among other things with this team, that could ultimately lead to his dismissal as general manager. But we're not at that point yet. Let's talk about Shea Weber to end off the show here. He had some pretty interesting comments at a media availability. I'd like to read them with you. When he was asked to assess his own play as of late, I don't think there's any need to be honest. This is a team game. What do you think of that quote? That's
typical Shea Weber. I mean, from being around this guy since he came to the team, he hates talking to the media. He doesn't like to talk about himself. I think he'd rather take a slap shot in the chin than have to answer a question from the media. Yes. And that was just his sort of answer, was like, it's typical Shea Weber. I mean, he doesn't like talk about himself, but I think with the way this team is right now and the struggles they're going through, I think it was a time for him as captain to step up and say, I need to be better. Everybody needs to be better. But that's not Shea Weber. So I wasn't surprised by what he said. That's just the way Shea Weber is.
And I don't think it needs to be, in my opinion, a really big deal, because like you said, that's how Shea Weber is. Shea Weber can go out and score 10 goals a game, and he wouldn't sit there and talk about how great it was. He would deflect and talk about the team. He doesn't want anything on him. Yes, he is the captain of this team, and maybe that was an opportunity for him to just say, we all need to be better. But if it was another player, say a Brendan Gallagher, for example, who said that, I would have, thought that's a little bit odd to be saying that. But Shea Weber's personality, he doesn't really like to talk to the media, and that's how he is. So if it was something positive about his game, he would have answered the same way. Something negative, he answered the same way.
And I think obviously he's feeling a lot of pressure, and down deep, he's the first guy to know that he's not doing what he should be doing. And he doesn't need necessarily, even though it's the job of the media, to be reminded that he's not doing the job the way he was or is capable of doing. And I actually was a little surprised. I mean, he could have been a little more diplomatic and say, you know what, I need to get better. The team needs to get better, but not just basically, dust it off as, next question. Let's talk about something else that's more important. But I think he knows first and foremost that he's not doing what he should be doing, and hopefully he'll figure out how he can get his game back.
Yeah, it's Shea Weber's game. I mean, is he playing hurt? Dominic Ducharme was asked after a recent game, like, is the reason he's not shooting the puck as much because he's hurt? And he said no. If he's not hurt, that's not good because he's got 5 more years to play on that contract. And if he's playing like that now, not hurt, oh boy, 5 more years is going to be tough to watch.
And they're really never going to tell you anything about injuries.
No.
If there is something there, there's no way we're going to know about it.
No.
But obviously, just looking at his overall game, something is not right. And if it's an age factor, is it the scheduling? Is it ice time logged? Combination of those things is not allowing him to do it, and he's having a hard time. You see the frustration, every time he's on the ice and something happens on the negative side, and he's ready to lose it. And it's not a pleasant situation when the team is not doing well, and you as an individual that is supposed to be showing some kind of leadership through example, not necessarily a rah guy, which I don't think he is, but it's not happening and it's not working. So not a fun environment right now for each and every one of those guys.
Well, he'll never say if he's hurt. If you remember a couple of years ago, he broke his foot in the first game of the season and then played like 21 games on a broken foot before he finally got shut down. So if there is something wrong with Shea Weber, he's never going to say it.
Yeah, I agree. He probably won't do that. But that comment to me just sounds like someone who's clearly agitated and someone who's clearly frustrated with how this season has just gone for this team, in particular his own play as well. I mean, almost every of these games that have turned into losses, you could point to a giveaway that's led to a goal against from Shea Weber. That's not something I'm used to seeing from this caliber of a player. So I can imagine this player has just been very frustrated over these last few games. And fine, maybe that's just how he is. And maybe I am still a little bit surprised that he kind of responded that way. But I also feel just a bit for him in the fact that things have just not been going his and his team's way. And I think he probably responded that way because he just felt that pressure and was just like, I don't want to, not necessarily want to deal with it, but that was just his way of he just got really defensive.
But when your captain says it's not on me, it's the team, then all the other guys in the room can go, oh, okay. Not on me. It's not my fault. It's the team's fault.
Well, it's not necessarily what he said. It was more just like he didn't necessarily want to be assessed in that way. He wanted to be more of a team sport, which fine. And I think Just kind of mentioned this as well too. It is kind of consistent with how he deals with that anyway. He's not one to heap praise on himself or talk about himself individually when things go well. Why should things be the same when things are negative, right? So fine. He does have that save for himself, I guess. But yeah,
Shea Weber being Shea Weber is what it was.
Sure. We can agree to that too.
I mean, if you look at the big picture, here's a 35-year-old, and if he feels and senses that his overall game is deteriorating, and the way that the game is played with the speed and the quickness of some of these guys, he's having a hard time keeping up, which kind of looks like it. That's tough. That's tough on an athlete, and he's feeling the pain, and it's unfortunate, but that's part of the life cycle in pro sports. But hopefully he can find a way to correct some of those problem areas because they obviously really need them.
Rick, I imagine at the end of your career, was there a point where you felt that way, like you couldn't keep up anymore?
Yeah, you really do, Stu. You mentally. Maybe you feel that you can still do it, but then when you get out and you start looking at your overall reaction and, decision making, and again, it was a little bit of a different game back in my year. Now it is so quick, and these guys have to be, on the ball every split second. And when you sense that things are really not working for you physically and mentally, it's tough to really think, you know what, I think my career is on the downside, and the last thing you want to have happen is have people say, well, I should have retired 2 years ago. So, it's a real difficult thing for him to deal with, and it's the reality, and, he'll have to handle it the way he feels is best to get through this.
Jess, did you want to tap in with a final word here? I can leave you the
All
floor.
I was going to say is that, you can tell by Shea Weber's body language that he's not playing up to his capability. I don't necessarily think we need him to say, I'm not playing well, for it to be, solidified. I don't think Shea Weber is going out there every night and thinking that he's playing at the top of his game. That's what I was going to say.
That's fair. Absolute fire from all three of you on this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. What did you think, viewers? How do you feel about this Montreal Canadiens team? How do you feel about them ahead of them playing against the Calgary Flames? Will a certain super rookie make his NHL debut in those games? We managed to get through an entire episode without mentioning his name. I'm going to continue that. But let us know in the comments how you feel about that. And visit hockeyinsideout.com to check out our full episodes.